Now, in the wake of the Bondi terrorist attacks, state and territory leaders have unanimously agreed to strengthen gun controls. The National Cabinet is considering proposals to limit ownership further, restrict what guns are available for ownership and how many a person can own. Here to discuss this further, we're joined by Professor Charles Watson. He is a public health physician and a board member of Gun Control Australia. Professor Watson, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Now, before this attack took place, a lot of people would have thought that Australia's gun laws were strong enough to stop something like this from happening. Why was that not the case?
Well, the fact was a lot of good things were done after the Port Arthur massacre in 1996. But it was a bit of a rush and some mistakes were made. And following that, not all the states and territories did all that they should have done about installing the separate components. And we saw the rise of political shooters parties in some of the states, which further impaired all of that. So, in other words, there was still quite a lot of work to be done after the National Firearms Agreement was set up, and that's very disappointing. But that was the truth of it. This event should lead to a significant clean-up of all of those, and I think it should be much more ambitious than in the past. For example, I think we should see an end to recreational hunting licences. I think is number one. I think also that gun storage at home is no longer appropriate. If people belong to a gun club, the guns should be stored in a secure place at that gun club. There's no reason to have guns in the metropolitan area in houses. And so a couple of big steps like that, I think, need to be taken. And of course, we need to look very hard at the new technology in relation to new rapid-fire guns and use of military ammunition. Basically, what's become common in Category B guns, which should be just pretty much an ordinary rifle, but they've turned into rapid-fire military-style guns, and we should stamp out all of that.
Professor, you touched on a few different things there. I'd like to go through the government's exploration of several changes to Australia's gun laws. Firstly,
Sure.
A national firearms register is being accelerated. It was expected to be in place by 2028, despite being in the pipeline for some time. Why was there such a huge delay?
I honestly don't know, Manny. I mean, these things do have bureaucratic and technical complexities, but it's not mind-boggling. And I've been following the National Register thing for a couple of years now, and it has been very slow. This should jolly all of that along, and we should get it very, very quickly. I mean, it's just ridiculous that we should have a national register which has on it all guns and all gun owners, and the characteristics, if they're unfortunate, of some of those gun owners, so they can be checked on. And that's the first and easy step. After that, the easy thing for other states to do is to look at what was done in Western Australia about 18 months ago. That is to introduce a whole new set of gun laws based on one thing: to increase community safety. And that's been a very successful process. Not to say that they should be just adopted exactly the same in every state, but the WA experience needs to be examined very closely. I'm pleased to see that Premier Cook is collaborating with Premier Minns in New South Wales in an attempt to get a state legislative program together.
Another measure the government is looking at is limiting the number of guns a single person can own. Now, Sajid Akram had a Category AB firearm licence and legally possessed 6 weapons. To the average person, that seems like a lot. But is that the case by gun ownership standards? There are people who own many more guns than that.
There are. A couple of years ago, I remember there was a guy identified in New South Wales who had 220 guns, and he got a licence for the first one, and he put the same reason up for the licence for the subsequent 214 guns. Just completely and utterly ridiculous. And the licensing authorities and the police need to really jump onto all of this and look at seriously what their responsibility is in licensing. In WA, it's been decided that licences will not be for life, they'll have to be renewed, just like car licenses have to be renewed. In occupations which have dangers, that's the same thing. You need renewal and in most cases a doctor's approval every 5 years in order to get that done. And another factor which has been raised in WA is that in cases where domestic violence charges have been proved, guns should be removed from the house. I think it should be more severe than that. I think if a domestic violence report is made, the first step should be to take the guns out of the house until it's sorted out. And if there's no charge, well, the guns can be given back. But guns and domestic violence have been a terrible record in Australia, and we should just not allow that to happen.
Professor, you mentioned this a bit earlier. Now, the government says it will also look at further restricting the types of weapons that are legal.
Yeah.
The rifles used in this attack appear to be bolt action. Obtaining an automatic or a semi-automatic weapon requires a higher category of licence. But how much has the gun market evolved in recent years that blurs that line between your traditional rifle and an automatic rifle?
Quite a bit. There's no doubt that there's been, from the last 30 years, quite a bit of technological change. There was also one terrible thing that happened in 2010 under Abbott, where to get a vote in the upper house, he allowed the importation of Adler rapid-fire shotguns into Australia, categorising them as Category B, in other words, available to ordinary licence holders. That was just completely ridiculous and must be stamped out. But this is a technically complicated area, same as the issue with 3D printed guns, and the issues as to what gun types are appropriate for different categories needs to be looked at extremely carefully.
Professor, finally, some federal politicians are slamming any changes to gun laws. They say that they're unfairly going after responsible, law-abiding firearm owners. What's your response to that?
Guns are not toys. They kill people, and they must be treated as serious, dangerous items. And it's about time we did that seriously in Australia. About 85% of people in Australia want much stronger gun laws. It's a very small minority that are gun enthusiasts that love the idea of shooting animals and that sort of stuff, and we should not pay any attention to them.
Professor Charles Watson, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manny.